Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, October 21st. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's a good sign in the fight against COVID-19. The CDC now reporting more Americans are looking to get a booster shot than a first-time vaccination. Now comes the issue of making all booster shots available. Reporter Steve Nannis with today's developments on doing just that.
As the push to get every eligible American vaccinated against COVID-19 continues, there is some growing concern over breakthrough infections. Health experts say boosters may be the key to maintaining immunity for those already fully vaccinated.
The boosters are there to extend the protection that people have been getting.
Until this week, only the Pfizer vaccine had been authorized as a booster for certain high-risk groups. But on Wednesday, the FDA granted both Moderna and Johnson & Johnson authorization for their booster doses.
The availability of these authorized boosters is important for continued protection against COVID-19 disease.
Now, the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee is set to clarify its own guidance after voting to recommend boosters for both Moderna and Johnson & Johnson.
An update on
Typically, shots can be administered once the CDC director signs off on the recommendations.
Over the coming days, we will release clinical considerations and public health guidance that will turn these decisions into practice. CDC's recommendations will not just address who should receive a booster dose, but also include what vaccine they should receive, how, and when.
Health experts say authorizing boosters could help pave the way to the end of the pandemic, but say boosters alone are not the solution.
It is those first doses that matter most for community spread, for hospitalizations, and for death. It's not the boosters that are going to make the difference. It's those first doses of vaccine.
In Washington, Steve Nannis, KPBS News.
Filipino Americans make up a large number of nurses and frontline workers across California. Now, a new report shows the toll the pandemic has taken on mental health within the community. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado spoke with an ICU nurse who shared his experience.
Ed Naval from San Diego has been a nurse for 13 years, 6 in the ICU. He's a proud Filipino American who comes from a long line of healthcare workers.
Helping and healing the sick was something that I've always wanted to do. It was something that my mom did, my mother-in-law did. It's kind of like ingrained in my genes.
But during the pandemic, his passion to serve others meant being exposed and possibly exposing his family to a virus that could kill.
We were scared. I was scared. I literally told my family, you know what, I might not be able to come back healthy, or, we did what a lot of people were doing. We were sleeping in separate rooms. I slept in the garage for a month, not knowing what would happen. My kids were like, they were afraid that dad might not come back or dad might die.
A study done by the Bulacan Center for Filipino Studies finds those feelings are not uncommon and have led to anxiety and depression for 1 in 4 Filipino Americans during the pandemic. 18% of nurses in California are Filipino, and 1 in 3 are frontline workers. Dr. Robin Rodriguez, the director of the Bulacan Center, says their study went beyond statistics.
But we knew that that wasn't going to capture the story and the real, the human face of this impact of this pandemic. So that's why we complemented the survey with these focus group sessions, or what we called talk story, or in Filipino, kwentuhan sessions. And they're really, really just heart-wrenching.
Rodriguez says the story of one young woman living in a multi-generational household, something not uncommon in Filipino families, has stayed with her.
For our family, it's kind of like a wolf is at the door. I mean, that was really just striking, to say the wolf is at the door, this sense of danger. And then that creating all sorts of anxiety and depression.
Rodriguez and Naval hope studies like these lead to more mental health resources for Filipino Americans who are disproportionately risking their lives for a living.
It took its toll, and that's part of the reason why a lot of the nurses did suffer some general anxiety, PTSD. So the biggest challenge now is just what are we going to do about it?
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
2 months of declining home prices in San Diego are over. KPBS reporter John Carroll looks into why homes are once again getting more expensive in San Diego.
Let's start with a decades-long truism. San Diego is a nice place to live, and the price of homes here reflects that.
We've got nice weather, and actually the economy is doing pretty well. And so again, a lot of people then like to live here.
There you have it from USD economics professor Alan Jin. It's a matter of supply and demand. So then why the downturn in prices over July and August? Turns out that can also be chalked up to supply and demand.
There's been more supply of houses on the market. More houses were made available. And so when the supply increases, then that puts a little bit downward pressure then in terms of prices.
Jin says that extra supply has now been gobbled up, so as of September, prices started climbing again. The latest data from CoreLogic DQ News spells it out. The median price for a home in San Diego County rose to $740,000 in September. Prices are up nearly 14% this year, but the median price is still off of the peak of $749,750 reached in June. Professor Jin says he thinks prices will continue to rise for the foreseeable future, especially if interest rates stay low. As an economist, that concerns him.
And so that could lead to people being priced out of the region. They might have to move as a result of that. In the extreme case, some people might end up homeless, but that could have an adverse effect then on the economy in the sense that we cannot attract high quality workers to work here because of the high cost of housing.
Plus, Jin says businesses that are able to attract quality workers often have to pay such high wages that they become less competitive. He says leaders must do more to deal with the issue, to make living here in this beautiful corner of the world at least somewhat affordable. John Carroll, KPBS News.
California is looking to create what would be the nation's largest buffer zone between oil wells and neighborhoods. The draft rule would ban new oil and gas drilling within 3,200 feet of schools, homes, and hospitals. Environmental groups and Governor Newsom's administration say the proposal is about protecting public health and safety. Right now, more than 2 million people in the state live near drilling sites, mainly low-income residents and people of color.
The research tells us that oil and gas operations generate toxic air contaminants that threaten health in a number of ways, including reduced lung function, leading to asthma exacerbations, diagnoses of asthma, and hospitalizations.
The proposal would not ban wells already operating in those zones, but would add new pollution controls. It's part of Newsom's effort to end oil and gas extraction in the state by 2045. The oil industry argues it would diminish reliable energy and raise prices. San Diego is going to fall short of its ambitious climate goals, according to a report released today. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says success hinges on getting people out of cars.
The county's planning agency, SANDAG, is months away from adopting a new regional transportation plan that aims to invest heavily in a network of new and improved bus and rail lines. But that plan will only get San Diego about halfway to its goal of slashing automobile commute trips in half by 2035. That's the conclusion of Thursday's report from the nonprofit Climate Action Campaign. Noah Harris is the group's transportation policy advocate.
Unless the city and SANDAG work together to expand upon the proposed network and the regional plan, we're not going to achieve our climate goals for the transportation sector.
Cars and trucks are San Diego's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. Replacing car trips with biking, walking, and public transit is central to the city's climate action plan. Harris says city leaders will have to double down on strategies to re-engineer San Diego's suburban-style, car-dependent neighborhoods to be denser and more walkable.
We really want this report to serve as a reality check for local elected officials that SANDAG is taking a great first step towards a more sustainable, a more equitable transportation future. But there's more work that needs to be done.
The report was based on modeling from SANDAG. The agency's board of directors is expected to adopt its new regional transportation plan in December. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Larry Emiliete today pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the death of his wife, Maya. She was reported missing on January 9th, 2 days after she was last seen alive. Prosecutors alleged Larry Emiliete killed her on or around January 7th, although her body has not yet been found. He faces up to 25 years to life in prison if convicted. Rates of gun violence were 30% higher in the U.S. during the pandemic than a year earlier. That's according to a study published today. Researchers found that 27 states, including California, had significantly higher risk of gun violence. Just one state, Alaska, was found to have significantly lower risk during the pandemic. The authors of the study suggested that psychological stress from COVID or an increase in firearm purchases may have contributed to the increase. The far-right group Defend East County burst onto the local scene last spring in response to racial justice protests. KPBS's Amita Sharma says now the group, associated with racism and conspiracies, is trying to be a player in San Diego politics.
The genesis of Defend East County is this. It launched in the late spring of 2020 after a band of mostly white men pledged to protect La Mesa businesses from Black Lives Matter protesters. Soon, the group known as DEC morphed into this. And then the group's founder, Justin Haskins, live-streamed from the January 6th insurrection. At one point that day, he called it our constitutional duty to overthrow a tyrannical government.
Yes, I was at the Capitol on January 6th. No, I did not take part in it. No, I do not agree with it. And I'd rather just move on from that.
But the 37-year-old construction manager still doesn't believe President Joe Biden was legitimately elected. And he believes false QAnon theories.
I mean, if you're asking me if I believe that there is a group of elitists in Washington, D.C. and in Hollywood that run a pedophile ring, absolutely, I believe that.
At least one DEC member has openly discussed violence against Black people. Federal prosecutors say San Diegan Gray Zamudio bragged in a text about pulling his Glock on a Black person he called the N-word and smashing on some BLM. Zamudio is serving a 2-year sentence in federal prison for firearms violations. Local Black activist Tasha Williamson says some DEC members have made racially tinged violent threats against her and her son.
They put this out on social media and people are calling for my lynching.
And then there is this undated video on Twitter of Haskins. Haskins claims the comments were taken out of context, but wouldn't elaborate. Despite all this, DEC has proven to be relevant in mainstream San Diego County politics. At one point in 2020, DEC boasted a Facebook following of more than 20,000 members. The platform eventually suspended the group due to violent racist rhetoric on its page. But by then, both Republican Darrell Issa and Democrat Amar Campa-Najjar had sought DEC's endorsement in the race for the 50th District congressional seat. Brian Levin is director of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at Cal State San Bernardino.
These social media platforms like Facebook have enabled people who would just be banging a kettle on a corner somewhere to use the power of symbols, memes, and videos to create fear on anecdotes and identify villains.
Haskins insists DEC's main purpose is simply to promote traditional conservative values.
We want to protect the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion. We want to protect the Second Amendment. We want to keep the government out of our homes with the Fourth Amendment.
And that DEC wants to get like-minded people elected.
So every local candidate that we supported won.
He says they include Santee Mayor John Minto, Santee Council members Dustin Trotter and Laura Kovacs, Val and Cajon Valley Union School District trustee Jim Miller. KPBS reached out to them and other GOP leaders such as Paula Witzel, chairwoman of the Republican Party of San Diego County. They either declined comment or didn't return calls. Mesa College political science professor Carl Luna believes their silence is an acknowledgement that DEC's radicalism has gone mainstream within the party. He calls the strategy dangerous.
You call out your crazies and you don't bring them into the coalition.
As local Republicans avoid addressing DEC, a more militant offshoot of the group has materialized. It's called the Exiled Patriots and led by another local resident, Mike Forzano, who did not respond to interview requests. Haskins says he condemns the Exiled Patriots because of their violent rhetoric.
And that is literally everything I have tried to avoid and make sure that we have never gone down that path.
Even so, Luna says January 6th shows DEC is a gateway group to that path. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Earthquakes are part of life here in California, and every year the state holds the Great ShakeOut earthquake drill to remind us how to react to a quake. KPBS reporter Melissa May has the story.
Alarm bells went off in schools around the state this morning, signaling the start of the Great Shakeout. This is a look at a previous drill. The annual event is done to help demonstrate the right technique of finding a safe place to wait out an earthquake.
So during the drill, we do the signal, the bell signal, and all of our students and staff do duck, cover, and hold, which means they duck under tables, cover under tables, and hold there until they receive the all clear.
Joyner Elementary Principal Kara Kachumba says the drill is important for both students and staff.
In the event that an earthquake comes, it becomes a reality. So it gives us a chance to practice with our students and prepare our teachers and students for the procedures they need to know in the event that we have to do them in real life.
As part of California's earthquake warning system, Earthquake Warning California, people can download the free MyShake app to receive warnings on their cell phones as soon as seismic waves are detected in their area. Melissa May, KPBS News.
Thanks for tuning in to KPBS News. I'm Marvin Gomez with your AccuWeather forecast across San Diego County. Those low clouds will continue to increase for the next few mornings with a stronger onshore flow. We have beneficial rain on the way, and eventually into the middle of next week, temperatures once again will start warming up a bit. Here's a quick look at tonight's forecast. Across our county, Borrego Springs 56 degrees. Looking at the downtown area, near 57 for San Diego. Oceanside near 50 degrees. Most of the southwest continues to stay very dry and quiet as we head into our Friday. Northern California, that's where we will be tracking a couple of showers, but again, high pressure is in control, keeping conditions relatively stable throughout most of Southern California and into the desert southwest. Here's a look at San Diego County for this Friday. 61 degrees, our high temperature in Mount Laguna. Looking at San Diego near 70 degrees, and that's going to be the high also for Oceanside. We are tracking a big storm that's going to be moving into California Sunday night and will bring impacts all the way into Tuesday morning across not just California but into other states. And you can see obviously across our area here on the southern tip of the state that there will be some rain, and generally speaking, some of the higher terrain could potentially see between 1 and 2 inches of rain, but across the valleys and along the coast, we're looking at an inch of rain, perhaps a little bit less than that. Beneficial rain, as I mentioned, that will help us alleviate with the drought. Here's a look at the coastal forecast. The umbrella will be needed as we transition into our Monday. We're also going to be tracking the downpours moving farther inland. Of course, temperatures in the upper 60s for both Monday and Tuesday across inland areas. And in the higher terrain, there will be sunshine Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But Monday, that's going to be the day where a couple of showers are going to be rolling by with highs close to the mid-40s. In the deserts, we're in the 80s, and then we dip down into the 70s for both Monday and Tuesday. And Monday's going to be the day where there's the possibility for a quick passing shower. For KPBS News, I'm Marvin Gomez.
The trucking industry says it's already serious. Labor shortages getting even worse. According to the American Trucking Association, the industry is down some 80,000 drivers. That's an all-time record high. The industry was already short more than 60,000 drivers before the pandemic. A spokesperson says many drivers are retiring or leaving the industry. 71% of all goods in the U.S. have to be moved by trucks at some point to get to stores. The backup of all those cargo ships off Southern California creating some new problems. Neighborhoods near those ports are seeing streets jammed with semis waiting to offload those containers. Both Governor Newsom and the Biden administration have called for 24/7 workflows to get the backlog cleared. Toy shops across the U.S. are running out of products. As Claire Sebastian reports, some shop owners say they have no idea of what's going to arrive in time.
Staff at this New York City toy store had no idea they'd be getting this delivery of books and toys today, or that all of the orders would be incomplete.
We're placing orders every day, constantly, as many as we can think of. One of my bigger companies, I ordered a huge order in February, and it just shipped a couple weeks ago. So it's so hard to determine when and if things are going to come.
The enticing displays here mask an unprecedented inventory problem. Many items running out.
I have 3 of these, there's no more downstairs. I have 3 of these, there's no more downstairs.
Others in oversupply.
I've got about 20 times that in my basement.
And behind the scenes,
this is what my very messy office looks like, with shipping out to be done and shipping in to process.
Christina Clark says she was warned by suppliers to stockpile ahead of the holidays. 85% of all toys sold in the US are imported, according to the Toy Association. And right now, the ships that carry them, mostly from Asia, are stuck in a giant maritime traffic jam, the result of surging demand as economies recover and ongoing COVID-related disruptions.
Well, it's not just a shipping crisis affecting the toy supply chain, there's also port congestion piling on and a shortage of truck drivers to get them to their destination.
That combination of online shopping, COVID shutdowns, resupplying things that were out of stock, and the holidays together have all combined into what, really is a crisis of shipping and a crisis of consumer products.
And it's sending costs skyrocketing.
The average shipping container has gone from somewhere right around $3,000 to around $24,000 on the spot market.
Christina Clark says many of her suppliers have raised prices twice this year, and some are now tacking on a shipping surcharge, most of which she isn't passing on to her customers.
Financially, how is this affecting you?
Well, I just have a lot of debt. I have a huge amount of debt and hope that it will be covered.
Her message to customers: start your holiday shopping now. This will not be over by Christmas.
Some students in City Heights got a late back-to-school boost today.
You want the yellow one? I think that's a good choice.
Kids at Joyner Elementary School got to pick out new backpacks filled with school supplies. The donations were collected by the United Way back in August. And while we're a couple of months into the school year, there's always a need.
These supplies run out, right? And so you always want to be replacing them. And it also is just helping to relieve that added stress that families are under right now. They're worried about paying rent. They don't need to worry about buying school supplies.
The United Way is still taking donations. You can find out more at uwsd.org. Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, is celebrated on the 1st and 2nd of November. And this year, the holiday holds a heavy weight as the pandemic has taken the lives of many people. KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel has more on the Mexican tradition of celebrating life and death taking place in Old Town.
Cheerful, happy, life of the party. She was everyone that she had spoke to loved her.
That's how Natalie Bishop hopes her grandmother, Celia Buenrostro, is remembered. Buenrostro was a longtime store owner of Celia's Dolls in Old Town. She died in August from COVID-19.
It was really hard, for all of us to come around here and visit the shop after knowing she wasn't going to be here.
Just weeks ago, Buenrostro was working at her shop, doing what she loved most: creating beautiful dolls. Now, her picture adorns the Day of the Dead altar outside her shop.
Now her having her up there, it's just weird every day just to see her and remember her that she's not here and that she's up there or she's in her presence or in the pictures.
Although their family is still grieving, Bishop says they've been celebrating Buenrostro's life and the legacy she leaves behind. It's exactly what Victor Santana hopes people will embrace when they visit the altar at Old Town Market.
We commemorate those that worked with us at some point or family members of people that work here today.
He framed pictures of his father and his grandparents. People who visit the altar may recognize prominent San Diegans that are no longer with us, and Mexican celebrities who left their mark on the world. Santana explains the meaning of leaving an offering or ofrenda on the altar.
You will put a photograph of somebody that died that you held really near and dear to yourself, and then you would probably add some items that you remember them by. For example, what they like to drink, what they like to eat, maybe a piece of clothing.
Old Town Market will hold a special celebration on November 2nd to honor the dead. For more on how you can participate in the community altars taking place across San Diego, visit our website at kpbs.org. Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
And we have a breaking news update for you. Millions more Americans can get a COVID-19 booster and choose a different vaccine for that next shot. Those who received Pfizer vaccinations months ago already are eligible for a booster. Now the CDC expanded approval for Moderna and Johnson & Johnson recipients too. And in a bigger change, the agency is allowing the flexibility of mixing and matching that extra dose. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.